There is a common saying that goes, "In space, no one can hear you scream." That is true because there is a non-existence of a medium through which sound can travel. This means something could explode right beside you in space and you would not even notice, unless you saw the flash of the explosion or some debris flying towards you. Aside from explosions, the absence of that medium also means we cannot hear the sound of any astronomical object traveling through space. However, luckily for us, sound is a mechanical wave and we can record the frequency of those waves and convert them into sound, just as we have done with the planets, moons, comets, and stars on this list. Please grab your headphones because you are in for a surprise. In 10th position we have the sun. It is a good thing that we cannot hear the sound of the sun. If we could, we would hear a deep and low humming sound that quickly becomes irritating and may even cause a headache if it goes on for too long. We know how the sun sounds, thanks to NASA and the European Space Agency, which teamed up to record the frequency of the waves caused by the materials moving on the sun. They passed the data over to Stanford University's experimental physics lab, which converted it into the sound that you will hear now. In 9th position we have Jupiter's aurora. On August 27, 2016, NASA's Juno spacecraft recorded the sound of the aurora, along one of Jupiter's poles. That sound is probably the creepiest one on this list. It sounds like the soundtrack of a Halloween movie. This is not a surprise to astronomers considering Jupiter's auroras have the strongest energetic particles in our solar system. I cannot really describe this sound, but if someone pressed me for an answer, I would say it begins as a screeching sound but quickly becomes eerie, ghostly and scary, as if an angry witch was screaming or something. In 8th position we have Saturn and Enceladus. On September 2, 2017, NASA's Cassini spacecraft recorded the sound of the plasma waves exiting Saturn and traveling to its rings and one of its moons, Enceladus. The sound is not as creepy as Jupiter's aurora, but it is equally difficult to describe. However, if someone pressed me for an answer, I would say it begins as a low-pitched sound, as if someone was playing a musical instrument that could have been a weird kind of drum. Then it is quickly overwhelmed by a whooshing background sound and a screaming gust of wind that mimics an airplane flying on a cloudy day. In 7th position we have Comet 67P. Comet 67P is called the singing comet because it makes a weird clicking sound that closely mimics the sound made by dolphins. The comet makes an eerie sound that can be mistaken for a gust of wind but overlaid with a repeated clicking sound. Scientists believe 67P's sound is the result of the vibrating plasma in its magnetic field. However, the sound is strange because it is different from the sounds made by other comets. In the meantime, scientists are closely monitoring the comet to see if it will continue making the same sound when it moves closer to the Sun or alter it as other comets do. Only time will tell. In sixth position, we have Mars. On November 26, 2018, NASA's InSight lander landed on Mars. On December 1st the same year, it recorded the sound of wind blowing on Mars. The sound is a relaxing, low-pitched note that will make your ears vibrate when you listen to it with a headphone. However, we should add that it has been sped up 100 times, so it will sound like a gust of wind on Earth. In fifth position, we have the dark side of the moon. Before we begin, we need to mention that there are two sides of the moon. There is the bright near side, which always faces the Earth, and the dark far side, which is only visible to a person or spacecraft orbiting the moon. In 1969, astronauts on board the Apollo 10 mission, which flew 3 months before Neil Armstrong's Apollo 11, recorded the sounds of the far side of the moon as they orbited it. The astronauts described the sound as weird. It was unlike anything they had ever heard. The astronauts recorded the sound instead of immediately relaying it to NASA, because they could not communicate with NASA from the far side of the moon. At some point, they even considered hiding the recording from NASA over concerns that NASA may think they were making things up and drop them from future missions. However, they later gave it to NASA, which released it to the public in 2008. We should also add that there is an ongoing dispute over the source of the sound. According to the video, one NASA engineer believes the sound is the result of radio interference. However, astronaut Al Worden of Apollo 15 thinks it is the handiwork of some unseen creature or object on the moon.
You see the sound outer spacey, doesn't it? Do you hear that whistling sound?
In fourth position, we have Jupiter's ionosphere. NASA's Juno spacecraft recorded the sound as it approached Jupiter on February 20, 2017. However, we should add that the sound was not created by the ionosphere itself, but is the result of Jupiter's magnetic field deflecting charged solar winds from the Sun. It is very difficult to describe this sound. In third position, we have Ganymede. Ganymede is the largest moon in our solar system. It is as big as a planet and would have been considered one if it was not orbiting Jupiter. Ganymede makes its own creepy sounds too. The sound we are talking about here is the sound of its magnetosphere, which refers to the part of the atmosphere that protects an astronomical object from the magnetic field of a nearby but larger astronomical object. NASA's Galileo spacecraft recorded the sound of Ganymede's magnetosphere as it flew past the Moon on June 27 and September 6, 1996. In second position, we have Uranus. Uranus and Neptune rank among the least noisy gas giants out there. The other two, Jupiter and Saturn, are considerably noisier. However, noise is relative as far as gas giants go. These planets are filled with gases and fluids and do not have land. So you should expect to hear never-ending wind noise if you ever manage to find yourself in one. Uranus makes a creepy, Howling noise that feels scary, cold and haunting one moment and relaxing, lonely and comfortable the next. In first position we have planet Earth. Earth has magnetosphere too, and it contains two rings of plasma we call the Van Allen radiation belts. The sound of the radiation belt is inaudible to our ears. However, like every other sound we have mentioned so far, we can pick it up with instruments. Its sound has been described as the sort of thing flocks of birds make early in the morning. Little wonder it was named chorus. If you enjoyed the content of this video, click the subscribe button so you can receive more content like this every week.